The TCS Prometheus gleamed against the backdrop of Earth's atmosphere, its massive titanium alloy hull catching the first rays of sunrise as it prepared for humanity's most ambitious journey yet. At 2 kilometers long, the ship dwarfed every previous vessel humans had constructed, a testament to what could be accomplished when nations set aside their differences. Captain Alina Reyes stood at the viewport of launch control, arms crossed tightly over her chest, watching as final preparations unfolded. She couldn't hear the protesters from here, but she knew they filled the streets of every major city. Half the world saw the Prometheus as salvation, the other half as an unconscionable waste of resources that should have been directed toward Earth's climate restoration. "Final systems check complete," announced the calm voice of Mission Control's director. "Dark matter engines at nominal capacity." Alina's comm unit beeped with a private channel notification. "Captain, we have a situation." It was Rajiv Patel, her chief engineer, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "The quantum fluctuations in Engine 3 are exceeding safety parameters by 17%. Alina closed her eyes, the weight of what should have been a triumphant moment suddenly crushing down on her shoulders. The nightmares from the Mars conflicts, the faces of those lost under her command, flashed behind her eyelids. "Options?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the eyes of launch control staff now turning toward her. "By the book. Abort and spend 3 months recalibrating." But Patel hesitated. "I believe I can compensate with a manual harmonic adjustment to the containment field." Alina's mind raced. The Prometheus project had already survived 3 cancellation attempts by the Coalition's Budget Committee. Another delay could kill it entirely. She addressed the ship's probability assessment of Chief Engineer Patel's solution. The AI's holographic avatar materialized beside her, a translucent blue woman with classical features. Calculating. Chief Engineer Patel's proposed adjustment carries a 76.4% chance of success. Recommended course of action is to abort launch and the consequences of Engine 3 failure if the adjustment is unsuccessful. Alina interrupted. Catastrophic dark matter containment breach. Total loss of vessel and all personnel. The launch control room had gone deadly silent. Alina felt the weight of 300 lives, the best minds Earth had to offer, pressing down on her decision. "Captain," HENA continued, "I cannot compute the intuitive factors you may be considering. This decision exceeds my parameters." Alina's gaze drifted to the photograph pinned inside her uniform pocket, her daughter Maya, who had written her a single line before today's launch. "Show them what we can do, Mom." "Patch me through to the crew," Alina ordered, her decision made. When the channel opened, she spoke with quiet authority. "This is your captain. We have a situation with Engine 3 that requires immediate attention. Chief Engineer Patel will implement a manual harmonic adjustment. All personnel brace for potential energy fluctuations." She switched to Patel's private channel. "Do it." The next 90 seconds stretched into eternity as Patel's fingers danced across his console. Warning alerts flashed across screens throughout the ship. Alina watched the telemetry data, her breathing shallow, as fluctuation indices peaked and then, miraculously, began to stabilize at levels just within catastrophic thresholds. "Adjustment complete," Patel reported, his voice hoarse. "Engine 3 stabilizing." A collective exhalation seemed to sweep through launch control. "Status of launch window?" Alina asked. "Still within parameters, Captain. We can proceed." Alina nodded to Mission Control's director. "The Prometheus is go for launch." As the massive engines ignited and the ship broke free of Earth's gravitational embrace, Science Officer Lydia Zhang's voice cut through the ship-wide communications. "Captain, we're detecting an anomaly at the edge of our sensor range, like nothing I've ever seen before." The dark matter engines hummed beneath their feet as humanity's greatest achievement accelerated toward the unknown, carrying with it both humanity's hopes and its divisions. "That's impossible," Science Officer Zhang murmured, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The readings suggest a stable Einstein-Rosen bridge, a functioning wormhole. The bridge of the Prometheus fell silent as the main view screen magnified the anomaly. A swirling vortex of dark purple energy, its edges crackling with lightning-like discharges. What held everyone's attention, however, were the objects emerging from its center. Ships, Lieutenant Commander Wee said, his tactical training immediately categorizing the threat. Hundreds of them. Captain Rice leaned forward. Athena. Analysis. Vessels appear to be crystalline in composition. The AI responded. Structures contain no recognizable design elements from Earth or Mars archives. Energy signatures exceed Prometheus capability by approximately 37%. Unable to determine life support requirements or crew complement. The largest alien vessel broke formation, its translucent, geometric hull shimmering with internal lights that pulsed in complex patterns. Captain, Communications Officer Diaz interrupted. We're receiving a transmission. I think. It's unlike any communication protocol I've encountered. A piercing sound filled the bridge, a crystalline harmonic that made several crew members wince in pain. Cut audio. Rise ordered. Dr. Khalid to the bridge immediately. The aliens had stopped advancing, their formation holding at what Reyes hoped was a respectful distance. On the main view screen, the lead vessel seemed to be scanning the Prometheus, prismatic beams washing over the ship's hull. Dr. Amira Khalid rushed onto the bridge minutes later, her dark eyes widening at the sight on the view screen. Xenolinguistics' finest hour, she whispered, already pulling up her translation algorithms on her tablet. They're scanning us. Lieutenant Sophia Chen reported from the defense station. Penetrating all standard shielding layers. Reyes straightened her uniform. Maintain defensive posture but take no aggressive action. Dr. Khalid, I need to communicate with them. Working on it, Captain. The transmission contains complex crystalline harmonics layered with what might be a mathematical language base. Inside the lead alien vessel, Supreme Nexus, Zor Thul observed the human ship with growing interest. His crystalline body refracted the light around him as he turned to his second-in-command. Curious, he communicated through vibrational frequencies. Their ship's energy patterns suggested an automated probe, yet it contains chaotic neural signatures. Biologicals. Shardmaster Krivex's crystalline form darkened with disapproval. The vessel is primitive. Its technology poses no threat to the collective. We should harvest it for resources and continue. Standard protocol would dictate immediate resource extraction. Zorthul agreed. Yet these beings have achieved dark matter manipulation without crystalline technology. This warrants investigation. Investigation wastes precious time, Krivex countered. The Devourer will not delay its pursuit. Zorthul's form pulsed with authority. Deploy the immobilization array. We will study them briefly before processing. Back on the Prometheus, alarms blared as energy readings spiked around the alien fleet. They're charging weapons, Wei shouted. Shields to maximum, Rise ordered. Defensive posture only. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across her console. Standard shields won't withstand whatever they're powering up. Permission to try the experimental harmonic modulation. Rise hesitated. The harmonic shield technology had failed spectacularly during 3 separate tests on Earth. Their energy signature has similarities to crystalline resonance patterns, Chen insisted. If I reconfigure our shields to create counter-harmonics. A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the lead alien ship, striking the Prometheus broadside. Do it, Rise commanded. Chen slammed her palm onto a glowing red override, bypassing safety protocols as she rerouted power through the experimental shield matrix. The ship shuddered as the alien beam connected, but instead of penetrating, the energy rippled across the hull in waves of blue light, redirecting back toward the source. The redirected energy struck a smaller alien vessel, causing its crystalline structure to fracture along one side. Oh hell, Rise breathed as hundreds of alien ships began to move in formation. Dr. Khalid, Please tell me you've got something. I have the beginnings of a translation matrix, Khaled said, her voice tight with tension. But I need more data too. You'll get it, Rise said grimly as the alien armada advanced. We're about to have plenty of conversation. Incoming vessels in mathematical attack formation, HFY announced, her calm voice incongruous amid the chaos. Projecting 17 minutes until shield failure under sustained bombardment. The Prometheus rocked as another crystalline beam struck the experimental shields. Lieutenant Chen's face was slick with sweat as she rerouted power to maintain the harmonics. We can't keep this up, she warned. The shield modulation is destabilizing our own power grid. Lieutenant Commander Wei studied the tactical display, his expression changing from concern to something unexpected. A slight smile. Captain, he said, their formation is perfect. Mathematically perfect. Reyes glanced sharply at him. That's our problem, not our advantage, Commander. No, it's both. Wei's fingers traced a pattern on the display. They move like they're parts of a single entity. No individual tactical decisions. They're executing a flawless algorithm. And algorithms can be disrupted. Rise finished, understanding. What's your proposal? The gravitational tethers. They were designed for sample collection, but if we reconfigure them as offensive weapons. Security Chief Valentina Sokolov stepped forward, her voice cutting through the bridge chatter. Absolutely not. Those tethers are anchored to our central power grid. One miscalculation, and we lose life support throughout the ship. We're dead in 17 minutes anyway, Wei countered. The ship shuddered again, more violently. Chen's console sparked, burning her hand, but she continued working without pause. Do it, Reyes ordered. Sokolov, prepare security teams for potential boarding. I suspect these crystals don't give up easily. In the medical bay, Dr. James Okafor was treating crew members injured by the initial impact when his sensors began registering anomalous readings. The wounded showed elevated cellular regeneration rates at the sites of exposure to the alien energy signatures. This is impossible, he muttered, watching skin cells knit together at 10 times normal speed. He tapped his comm unit. Bridge, this is medical. The alien weapons are emitting some form of regenerative radiation. It's affecting our cell structure. On the bridge, Rise had no time to process this information as Wei executed his plan. The massive gravitational tethers, originally designed to gently capture asteroid samples, fired toward the alien formation, their energy calibrated not to pull but to disrupt. The effect was immediate and startling. As the gravitational waves struck the perfectly aligned alien ships, their formation distorted. Several smaller vessels collided, their crystalline hulls fracturing on impact. Their entire battle strategy relies on perfect positioning, Wei explained, his hands dancing across the tactical controls. Each ship is part of a collective calculation. Disrupt the pattern. And the algorithm fails, Rice finished. Athena analyzed their adaptation response. Vorax vessels are attempting to recalibrate, the AI reported, using the name they'd given the crystalline beings based on Dr. Khaled's partial translations. Their response time is decreasing by 7.4% with each iteration. They are learning. Aboard the Lid Vorax ship, Zordful's crystalline form pulsed with rare emotion. Impossible, he communicated to his commanders. The primitives are using gravity itself as a weapon. Our formations are compromised. Kryvex vibrated with anger. They reflect our immobilization beams. They distort our formations. These are not the actions of an inferior species. Deploy the boarding crystals, Zordful ordered. We must obtain their technology directly. On the Prometheus, alarms blared as breach alerts triggered throughout the lower decks. Sokolov's security team raced to intercept, but the first engineers to encounter the crystalline invaders weren't waiting for rescue. Junior engineer Tomas Rodriguez and his maintenance team found themselves trapped with advancing crystalline forms that seemed to grow from the ship's hull, where the alien weapons had struck. Armed with nothing but maintenance tools, Rodriguez made a desperate decision. "Pressure valves now," he shouted, grabbing a plasma cutter. His team scrambled to follow his lead, frantically cutting specific patterns into the corridor walls. When the crystalline forms turned the corner, Rodriguez triggered the emergency decompression protocol for that specific section, while his team braced themselves behind hastily welded supports. The explosive decompression ripped the growing crystals from the hull and ejected them into space, along with everything not secured. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out as the crew improvised defense after defense, using equipment in ways it was never designed for. The Vorax boarders, encountering such unpredictable resistance, began to retreat. On the bridge, Rise watched as Wei's unconventional tactics disabled a third Vorax dreadnought. "Captain," Dr. Khalid called out, her voice strained, "I'm getting something clear through the translator. It's an internal communication from their fleet. Listen." A crystalline voice filled the bridge. "The chaotic ones cannot be predicted. Fall back and reassess." The bridge fell silent as the Vorax fleet withdrew to a defensive position. 3 of their dreadnoughts drifted, disabled but still intact, their crystalline surfaces pulsing with subdued light. "Damage report," Rise ordered, wiping blood from a cut above her eye. "Shields at 27%, Chen reported. Dark matter engines stable but cooling systems compromised on decks 7 through 12. 19 injured, no fatalities." Rise studied the tactical display, weighing options. The Vorax outnumbered them drastically, but had retreated despite their advantage. "Why?" "Dr. Khalid, what have you learned from their communications?" The xenolinguist looked up from her station, her eyes bloodshot from strain. "They're hierarchical, Captain. Their communications suggest a collective intelligence with specialized nodes. They call themselves the Vorax. They seem confused by us. Confused enough that we might talk instead of fight," Rise murmured. She straightened. Decision made. Open a channel to the Vorax flagship. Security Chief Sokolov stepped forward, her face hardening. "Captain, with all due respect, they just tried to kill us. My sister died in the Europa incident when we attempted communication with the unknown." "This isn't Europa," Rise replied quietly. "And we're not dead yet." Sokolov's hand drifted to her sidearm. "The military protocol for first contact after hostile action is clear. We're not military, Chief. We're explorers who can defend ourselves." Rise turned to face her crew. "Look at what we just accomplished. We held off a technologically superior force. Now we have their attention. And if they're regrouping for another attack?" Sokolov demanded. "Then we'll be in exactly the same position we are now, but having tried peace first." Rise nodded to Communications Officer Diaz. "Open the channel." As Diaz worked, Dr. Khalid clutched her head suddenly, wincing in pain. "Doctor?" Rise asked, concerned. "The translator matrix," Khalid whispered. "It's evolving. I designed it to adapt to new linguistic inputs, but it's processing faster than predicted. Their language structure is infiltrating the algorithm." "Is it dangerous?" Khalid's eyes unfocused briefly. "Not dangerous. Just intense. I can hear them, Captain. Not just translate, hear them." Across the void, aboard the Vorax command ship, Zorthol observed the human vessel with growing fascination. They disabled 3 dreadnoughts without destroying them. He communicated to the collective. "Preservation of life is inefficient yet intriguing." Shardmaster Krivex vibrated with disapproval. "Their unpredictability makes them dangerous. The collective protocol for dangerous species is clear. The collective has never encountered this particular danger," Zorthol countered. 17 species conquered, and none displayed such creativity. A crystal mine technician interrupted. "Supreme Nexus, the primitive vessel is transmitting." Zorthol's form shifted in surprise. Display. Captain Rice's image appeared before the Vorax leadership, her posture straight despite visible injuries. "I am Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth vessel Prometheus," she began, Dr. Khaled's translator converting her words into crystalline harmonics. "We have demonstrated our ability to defend ourselves, but our mission is peaceful exploration. I propose direct communication to prevent further loss of life, yours and ours." Kryvex vibrated with alarm. "They know our weaknesses now. This is deception. Perhaps, Zorthal acknowledge. Or perhaps it is opportunity. Prepare a neutral meeting vessel." On the Prometheus, Rise received the Vorax response. "They've agreed to talks," she announced, surprised despite her hoped-for outcome. "It's a trap," Sokolov insisted. "Maybe," Rise conceded. "That's why I'm taking you, Dr. Khaled, and..." She paused, considering. "Dr. Okafor." "Medical?" Sokolov questioned. "Why not waive for tactical support?" "Because Okafor reported anomalous biological readings during the attack. If we're going to understand these beings, I want our chief medical officer's insights." Dr. Okafor arrived on the bridge looking distinctly unwell, his dark skin ashen beneath its usual tone, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. "Doctor?" Rides asked, alarmed. "I'm fine," he insisted, though he clearly wasn't. "Just side effects from exposure to their energy signatures. Nothing serious." "Are you certain you can handle this meeting?" Okafor's eyes seemed to glint with an unusual crystalline sheen as he nodded. "Captain, after what I've observed in our injured crew, I wouldn't miss this encounter for anything in the universe." As the diplomatic team prepared to board the shuttle, Lieutenant Commander Wei approached Reyes privately. "If this goes wrong," he said quietly, "I'll get the Prometheus and crew home." Reyes clasped his shoulder. "Let's make sure that contingency isn't necessary, shall we?" The neutral meeting vessel hung between the two fleets, a crystalline structure hastily modified to support human life systems. Inside, Captain Rice and her small team faced the Vorax delegation across a translucent table that seemed to grow directly from the floor. Supreme Nexus, Zorthal towered over the humans, his crystalline body refracting light in hypnotic patterns. Beside him, Shardmaster Kryvex maintained a darker, denser configuration, his sharp edges seemingly poised for aggression. 17 species, Zorthal began, the crystalline harmonic of his speech, translated by Dr. Khaled's increasingly sophisticated matrix. 17 civilizations have stood where you stand. All chose submission or extinction. Dr. Khaled winced as the translation flowed through her enhanced algorithm, the words somehow resonating directly in her consciousness rather than through her equipment. "And yet here we are," Rise replied evenly, offering a third option. "Which is?" Kryvex demanded, his form darkening further. "Cooperation, cultural exchange, shared technological development." The Vorax leadership vibrated in what might have been their equivalent of stunned silence. Kryvex's edges sharpened visibly. "Deception," he accused. "You seek our technology to strengthen your position. If we wanted only your technology," Rice countered, "we would have destroyed your disabled ships and salvaged the remains. Instead, we're here, talking." Dr. Okafor swayed slightly, gripping the edge of the translucent table for support. The surface beneath his fingers momentarily clouded where he touched it, drawing Zorthal's immediate attention. "Your companion is unwell," the Supreme Nexus observed, "or perhaps changing." Before Rice could respond, Okafor collapsed, his body convulsing. Security Chief Sokolov threw her weapon instinctively, but Rice placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Dr. Okafor needs medical attention," Rice stated firmly. "This meeting." "Scanners," Zorthal ordered sharply. A beam of light emanated from the ceiling, bathing Okafor in prismatic energy. "Impossible," Kryvex exclaimed, his crystalline form vibrating intensely. "He's incorporating our resonance patterns at the cellular level." Okafor's skin had begun to develop translucent patches that caught the light like facets of a crystal. His eyes snapped open, now distinctly lined with crystalline webbing. "Captain," he gasped, I can see them." Dr. Khaled dropped to her knees beside him. medical scanner in hand, but froze as her translator began emitting a high-pitched alarm. Her eyes widened as she looked up at Reyes. "Captain, the wormhole. Athena is detecting massive energy fluctuations." Aboard the Prometheus, Lieutenant Wei watched in horror as the sensors registered a catastrophic surge from the wormhole. He immediately opened a channel to Reyes. "Captain, the anomaly is destabilizing. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's coming through, it's massive." Reyes turned to Zorthal. Decision made in an instant. "Supreme Nexus, my ship reports a dangerous energy surge from the wormhole. I'm sharing this intelligence with you immediately." The crystalline leader studied her for a moment before issuing commands in rapid harmonic sequences. The meeting chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the distant wormhole now expanding dramatically, its purple energy darkening to near black. "You warn us," Zorthal said, "despite our previous hostility." "Because whatever's coming affects us both," Reyes replied. The Supreme Nexus seemed to reach a decision. What follows us is why we travel, why we harvest, why we must survive at any cost. His crystalline body dimmed slightly. "We are not conquerors, Captain Reyes. We are refugees." "Refugees from what?" "The Devourer," Kryvax interjected. "It consumes entire star systems. It hunts us across the cosmos." On the table between them, a holographic display activated, showing the destruction of a crystalline world. Massive tendrils of dark energy tearing through planets, shattering them into cosmic dust. "This was our homeworld," Zorthal said quietly. "The first of 7 systems we have lost to it." Dr. Okafor struggled to his feet, his transformation accelerating visibly. "Captain," he whispered, his voice resonating oddly, "I'm receiving data directly from their collective. The Devourer. It's drawn to their crystalline signature." "What?" Reyes asked, the implications hitting her immediately. "They're unknowingly leading it to every world they visit," Okafor confirmed. "Their very nature attracts it." Reyes stared at the Vorax leader, faced with an excruciating ethical dilemma. Tell them they are the beacon drawing destruction, or withhold this potentially civilization-shattering truth. Chief Engineer Patel's voice broke through on the comm channel. "Captain, I may have a solution. The dark matter engines, if we reconfigure them with Vorax crystalline technology, we might create a quantum barrier against whatever's coming through." "At what cost?" Reyes asked. "It would permanently alter the Prometheus. We'd never be the same ship again." As the wormhole expanded further, darkness bleeding into normal space, Reyes made her choice. "Supreme Nexus, we need to talk about your crystals and our dark matter." "Captain Reyes, this is Earth Command. Your actions are unauthorized and compromise humanity's security. You are ordered to withdraw immediately and return to Earth." Admiral Castillo's stern face filled the communication screen as Reyes stood in the Prometheus's engineering bay, now transformed into a bizarre hybrid workspace where human and Vorax technologies merge. Crystal structures grew from connection points in the dark matter engine housing, their facets pulsing with energy. "With respect, Admiral," Reyes replied, "that's not possible. This isn't a request, Captain. It's a direct order." Castillo leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We've monitored your transmissions, working with these aliens after they attacked us. The Security Council has officially disavowed the Prometheus mission. You're on your own." The transmission cut abruptly. Reyes stood motionless for a moment before Chief Engineer Patel approached, concern etched on his features. "They've cut us off from the network," he confirmed. "All nearby human outposts have been instructed to consider us compromised." "Then we'd better succeed," Reyes said simply, turning back to the work at hand. The engineering bay buzzed with frenetic activity as human engineers collaborated with Vorax crystal mines on Patel's quantum barrier design. The process was not without friction. Human intuitive leaps confounded Vorax's logical progression, while the aliens' crystalline approach to engineering seemed mystical to the humans. No, Lieutenant Chen argued with a hovering Vorax technician. The resonance has to be variable, not fixed. Predictable patterns won't work against this thing. The Vorax's crystalline body pulsed with frustration. Variability introduces error probability. Error is inefficient. Exactly, Chen countered. We need controlled chaos. That's what worked against your weapons. Dr. Okafor, his transformation now stabilized at roughly 30% crystalline integration, mediated between the groups. His unique perspective, part human intuition, part Vorax crystalline perception, proved invaluable as the work progressed. A violent explosion rocked the ship, sending everyone sprawling. Emergency klaxons blared as breathable atmosphere vented from a ruptured compartment. Containment breach in Section 7. A voice shouted over the comms. Pressure dropping. On a monitor, Reyes watched in horror as the security feed showed 3 Vorax engineers and 2 human technicians trapped in the rapidly decompressing chamber, cut off from safety by fallen debris. The safety protocols are jammed, Paddle reported grimly. Automated systems can't seal it. The Vorax crystal mind engineers began a harmonic vibration that Reyes now recognized as their acceptance of fate. According to their protocols, the trapped individuals were already considered lost. Lieutenant Sophia Chen shoved her way through the crowd, eyes locked on the monitor. Those are my people in there, both species. Before anyone could stop her, Chen raced toward the compromised section. Reyes watched on the monitor as Chen reached the emergency bulkhead controls and physically overrode the safety lockouts, a procedure that exposed her directly to the radiation leaking from the damaged systems. What is she doing? Zorthal asked, having joined Reyes at the monitor. The probability of success is negligible. She's saving them anyway, Reyes replied quietly. As radiation alarms screamed warnings, Chen manually reconfigured the emergency systems, her hands moving with desperate precision, even as her skin reddened with radiation burns. The trapped engineers, human and Vorax alike, escaped through the emergency route she created. Chen collapsed as the last crystalline engineer passed through the opening, her body convulsing from radiation exposure. The Vorax engineers she had saved stopped, seemingly confused by her sacrifice, before one of them carefully lifted her and carried her toward the medical bay. Incomprehensible, Zorthal murmured. She knew the cost. That's humanity, Reyes said. Sometimes we calculate the cost and pay it anyway. The ship rocked again as the wormhole expanded further, the Devourer's tendrils now visible as writhing darkness against the void of space. On the bridge, alarms indicated that Shardmaster Krivex had seized control of half the Vorax fleet, declaring Zorthal unfit for command after allying with lesser beings. As system failures cascaded throughout both fleets, Reyes met Zorthal's crystalline gaze. We need to finish this now, together, or none of us survive. The Supreme Nexus's form pulsed with an unfamiliar pattern. What Reyes would later learn was the Vorax equivalent of resolve. To the heart of the storm, then, he said. Together. The quantum barrier generator hummed with unstable energy, crystal formations pulsing with blue-white light as dark matter particles swirled within their lattice structure. The hybrid technology was beautiful, terrible, and completely untested. One shot, Chief Engineer Patel said, his face haggard from days without sleep. The alignment will only hold for minutes once activated. Through the viewport, the wormhole had become a monstrous tear in spacetime, its edges now completely black. Tendrils of darkness writhed outward, groping blindly into normal space, seeming to absorb the very starlight around them. All Vorax loyal to the Supreme Nexus have moved into position. Lieutenant Wei reported from Tactical. Krivex's faction is maintaining distance, but has weapons locked on both the anomaly and us. Captain Reyes nodded, her decision already made. Initiate barrier deployment sequence. As the systems powered up, Dr. Khaled suddenly cried out, clutching her head. Her translator device emitted a high-pitched whine before shorting out entirely. Doctor. Reyes moved quickly to her side. Voices, Khaled whispered, her eyes wide with terror. Not Vorax. Something. Older. Much older. Throughout the ship, other crew members, particularly those previously exposed to Vorax radiation, began reporting similar experiences. Strange whispers filled their minds, offering knowledge, power, escape. Release me. I bring evolution. I bring transcendence. Your crystalline friends know this truth, but flee from perfection. Lieutenant Wee grimaced, fighting against the intrusion. It's like old stories. He managed through gritted teeth. Devils offering deals. Tricksters promising gifts with hidden costs. Dr. Okafor staggered onto the bridge, his partially crystalline form vibrating with tension. It's scanning us, he reported, learning from each mind it touches. The barrier, Rise demanded. Charging at 67%, Paddle reported. But the Devourer's influence is causing fluctuations in the crystal matrices. A massive shudder ran through the ship as one of the tendrils brushed against their shields, instantly dropping them by 40%. It's adapting, Zordful warned, his crystalline form pulsing urgently. It learns from each encounter, each defense. Another tendril struck a Vorax vessel, seemingly passing through its hull without physical damage. Seconds later, the ship turned its weapons on its allies, its crystal crew now glowing with inner darkness. It's taking control, Wei realized, converting them somehow. The quantum barrier finally reached full charge, but as Paddle moved to activate it, his console erupted in a shower of sparks. Deployment systems damage, he reported grimly. We can't trigger the barrier remotely. Ray studied the tactical display, understanding blooming with cold clarity. Then we deploy it from inside the wormhole, she stated. At the nexus point, a shocked silence fell over the bridge. That's suicide, Wei objected. Nothing would survive that close to the entity. Then I'll need volunteers, Rise replied. A skeleton crew to take the Prometheus in while the rest evacuate the Vorax ships. I will accompany you, Zordful declared immediately. When Reyes called for human volunteers, every crew member on the bridge stepped forward without hesitation. The same scene played out across the ship. Engineers, scientists, security personnel, all willing to sacrifice themselves for Earth, and, remarkably, for their new Vorax allies. This unanimity, Zordful observed, his crystalline form vibrating with what might have been emotion, is not logical. It's human, Rise replied simply. As evacuation procedures began for non-essential personnel, Dr. Okafor approached Rise privately, his crystalline patches glowing with unusual intensity. Captain, I'm perceiving something the others can't, he said urgently. The Devourer. It's not what the Vorax believe. It's not simply destroying, it's transforming. Transforming into what? I don't know, but the patterns in my altered DNA resonate with it somehow. I think it might be trying to communicate. Ray studied him carefully. Are you certain? No, Okafor admitted. But consider this. If it wanted pure destruction, why convert rather than simply annihilate? What if we're misunderstanding its nature entirely? As the Prometheus prepared for its final mission, poised to deliver the quantum barrier directly into the heart of darkness, Rice faced her most impossible decision yet. Prepare the barrier for deployment, she ordered, but also prepare a communication array using Dr. Okafor's crystalline patterns as a base frequency. You're going to try to talk to it, Wei asked incredulously. I'm going to give it one chance to talk to us, Rice corrected, before we potentially destroy something we don't understand. The darkness reached toward them like hungry fingers as the Prometheus's engines fired, driving them directly toward the maw of the wormhole and the entity that waited within. The Prometheus emerged from the wormhole like a ghost ship, its hull trailing wisps of darkness that, strangely, seemed to repair rather than damage the vessel's structure. Communications remained silent for 17 agonizing minutes as the combined Vorax human fleet held position, weapons ready. When Captain Rice's voice finally crackled through the static, it carried a strange harmonic undertone. This is Prometheus. We're coming home. On the observation deck of the Lid Vorax vessel, evacuated crew members watched in astonishment as their ship approached, enveloped in a cocoon of gently undulating dark energy. The Prometheus's hull showed signs of catastrophic damage, yet the darkness seemed to be restructuring it, molecule by molecule. What happened in there? Lieutenant Chen whispered, her radiation burns now covered with regenerating skin that held a faint crystalline sheen. When the airlocks finally opened and the skeleton crew emerged, they moved with the careful steps of people forever changed. Dr. Okafor led them, his transformation now complete, his body a perfect hybrid of human tissue and crystalline structure, pulsing with inner light. It wasn't a devourer, he explained to the assembled crews, human and Vorax alike. It was a transformer, a cosmic force seeking compatible intelligence. He gestured, and a holographic display formed between his crystalline fingers, showing what had transpired within the wormhole. The Prometheus had penetrated to the heart of the anomaly, where space-time itself warped around a consciousness vast beyond comprehension. As they prepared to deploy the quantum barrier, Dr. Okafor had established contact through his uniquely resonant hybrid physiology. It recognized in humans something it had never found in the Vorax. Okafor continued, the Vorax are logical, ordered, collective, but humans possess something different. Empathy. The ability to understand the truly alien. Zorthol's crystalline form pulsed with realization. It pursued us across galaxies not to destroy us, but to find what we lacked, Okafor confirmed. The Vorax's rigid thinking made true communication impossible. It sought connection, but found only fear. Supreme Nexus, Zorthol approached Captain Rice, his crystalline form bowing slightly. You have transformed our understanding as surely as the entity transformed your ship. With the immediate threat resolved, the Prometheus began its long journey home, escorted by the Vorax fleet. The massive alien vessels surrounded the hybrid human ship in protective formation, an unprecedented alliance. During the journey, a remarkable exchange unfolded. Vorax crystal minds joined human scientists in research chambers, learning concepts that had never occurred to their logical minds. Friendship, humor, hope. In return, humans gained insights into technologies beyond their current understanding, their progress accelerated by decades. Lieutenant Wei found himself instructing Vorax tactical officers in the art of improvisation, while Dr. Khaled's increasingly sophisticated translator allowed deeper cultural exchange. Even Security Chief Sokolov, who had once threatened mutiny at the thought of alien cooperation, now coordinated joint defense protocols with her Vorax counterparts. As they approached Earth's solar system, tension mounted once more. Long-range scans showed Earth's defense grid fully activated, a fleet of warships positioned to intercept what they believed was a compromised vessel leading an alien invasion force. All communication attempts are being blocked. Communications Officer Dias reported. They're treating us as hostile. Rice exchanged glances with Zorthol. Suggestions. The Supreme Nexus studied the tactical display. We could retreat. Find another world. No, Rice said firmly. That's our home. We just need to show them we come in peace. She turned to Lieutenant Chen. The atmospheric regeneration technology you've been developing with the crystal mines, could it be deployed from orbit? Chen nodded slowly. Understanding dawning. We could begin cleansing Earth's pollution without landing. No hostile force would do that. As Earth's warships approached with weapons charge, the Vorax fleet held position while the Prometheus moved forward alone. From its modified systems, a wave of crystalline energy washed over Earth's atmosphere, catalyzing a reaction that neutralized decades of industrial pollutants. The skies began to clear visibly, even from space. They've stopped advancing, Wei reported as Earth's defense fleet halted. Incoming transmission. Admiral Castillo's face appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of confusion and wonder. Captain Rice, what have you brought us? Elena Rice smiled, glancing around at her transformed crew and their alien allies. "The future, Admiral. We've brought the future." In the days that followed, the Prometheus became the center of a new era, part human ingenuity, part Vorax precision, part cosmic mystery, a living symbol of what disparate species could accomplish together. As humanity welcomed its first alien allies, news spread throughout the galaxy of the small planet of bipedal beings whose single ship had faced the unknown, and returned not with conquest, but with understanding. Dr. Okafor, standing beside Captain Rice as Earth and Vorax representatives, signed the first Galactic Concordat, spoke quietly. "This is just the beginning, you know. The entity showed me glimpses of what's out there, wonders and terrors beyond imagination. Then we'll face them the same way we faced this," Rice replied, watching human and crystalline hands join in agreement. "Together."